We're back in London, ready for Arsenal's match against Manchester United this weekend. Mikel Arteta's press conference is tomorrow. There's more reaction to that news regarding Ethan Nwaneri's loan deal and some really interesting insights that have emerged this week about just how Arsenal have achieved everything they are achieving and how they might get even more in the years to come. This is today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much as always for tuning in, and I hope you've had a really good week so far. I'm sure the game on Tuesday would have helped with that massively, and interesting results, of course, in yesterday's UEFA Champions League fixtures as well, that leaves everything on a knife edge for everyone except, well, Arsenal, really, and Bayern Munich, to be fair. But it's a very interesting scenario that Arsenal find themselves in, where everyone else is just in an absolute state of chaos. The Champions League group stage is just, I don't know about you, but it's really, and it was controversial when they introduced it. It was controversial when they changed it, and a lot of people don't like change, and I get that massively. But I think that this is a good thing. I think it's actually an improvement. I think that we've found ourselves now in a reality where the Champions League phase is a lot more entertaining, and I think there's more jeopardy to it. And I think there's more intrigue about the fixtures. I quite like it. And I think maybe there is an argument that we should be a little bit more open to, well, to changes to structures and changes to competitions when the outcome is more positive. So, yeah, I kind of like the change. I kind of like the Champions League format, and I prefer it this way. The only thing I don't prefer is the 2 extra games. And as a club that is yet to, of course, play in the playoff round, perhaps I would like it a lot less if I was involved as a fan or a journalist working around a club that was involved in that. Who knows? But that's certainly the feeling I've got at the moment. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Claire, good morning to you, to Gratley Poos, to Sid, to Dave, to Mike. We've got Matt G, Glenn, Runs with Cows, Paul, Peter. Good morning to Knowledge and John, to Maria and Tom, to Brian. We've got Barry and Granddaddy Gooner Paul. We've got Aris Silky and Yanis. Good morning to Aimsy and Paul and other Paul in the chat box. Mohammed, Steve, Z, thank you to you all for joining me. Really appreciate your time, and I hope you have had a really strong week so far, and everybody else, of course, that's joining us. If you are catching up on the show, make sure you drop a like on the video. If you are able to do so, hype the video by swiping that comment section to the left. And if you're listening on audio platforms, thank you for you listening, and do drop a 5-star review rating, and that would be greatly appreciated indeed. Right, let's not waste any more time and jump into today's slides. Yes, the slideshows are back. You'll be happy to see. And also, I should say that there is the vlog. The vlog is up from Milan. You can go and watch the insights and behind the scenes of covering the game in San Siro, if you would ever be so kind to want to do so. So head over to my Instagram at Tom Canton Media, and you can find it all there. Yes, let's round up the league phase games from the most recent round of fixtures and then look at what that has done to the table ahead of what is going to be a very interesting final round of fixtures for everybody except Arsenal and Bayern, basically. So Club Brugge beating Kairat at Kairat 4-1 gives you a bit of an insight into how Arsenal might be hopeful of a clean sweep of wins before this tournament is out. But a glimpse, big win for them, beating Manchester City 3-1 in their game. Very impressive indeed. Villarreal losing 2-1 at home to Ajax, Zinchenko's brand new club. Tottenham Hotspur beating Dortmund 2-0 in a very surprise result that leaves their league phase position a lot healthier compared to their Premier League position. Olympiacos 2-0 winners over Bayer Leverkusen. Sporting beating PSG. Arsenal winning away at Inter Milan. Real Madrid responding to that elimination from the Copa del Rey to Albacete, embarrassingly, after the sacking or removal of Xabi Alonso. 6-1 winners over Monaco. Copenhagen drawing 1-1 at home with 10 men against Napoli. Galatasaray drawing 1-1 against Atletico Madrid. Karabag winning 3-2. This is the second of the games from yesterday's fixtures. 3-2 winners over Eintracht Frankfurt. Marseille losing 3-0 at home to Liverpool. We'll talk about Marseille a little bit more shortly. Newcastle, 3-0 winners over PSV. Barcelona winning 4-2 at Slavia Prague after it was 2-2 at the break. Juventus, 2-0 winners over Benfica. Chelsea, narrowly, ever so narrowly, 1-0 winners over Cypriot side Paphos. Bayern Munich with 10 men, 2-0 winners over Union Saint-Gilloise. And Athletic Club winning away 3-2 at Atalanta. So what has that done to the Champions League table? Well, it means that we have a lot of clubs on 13 points. Not just like 3 or 4. We've got 5, 6, 7, 8 teams sitting between 6th place PSG and 13th placed Atalanta on 13 points. Not only that, but we've got Inter in 14th on 12 points. Juventus on 12 points, 15. Can I just say, Inter were in the top 5, 6 teams before they played Arsenal. They lose to Arsenal. The other teams around them win. They drop to 14th in the table. It is crazy what is going on in the Champions League this year. And also, Real Madrid in 3rd, currently 3rd in the Champions League phase, are not guaranteed a top 8 finish because of the amount of teams that are still behind them on just 13 points, only 2 points behind them. Same with Liverpool on 15 points. Same with Spurs on 14 points. Same with PSG, as I say, on 13 points. Arsenal, of course, are straight through. They're going to be the league winners. They're going to beat Kairat Almaty. I don't really have too much jeopardy in saying that. They are likely to finish the league on 24 points and go straight through. And it means, of course, they are rewarded with a second leg at home in every single knockout round that they go to until the final, of course. So what a reward that is. Arsenal will play all of their qualified knockout rounds with the second leg at home. So really positive that is. And Bayern Munich are looking likely to be the other team that will have that as well. But yes, the final round of fixtures is going to be absolutely chaos. And I really can't wait for it. And I'm going to be at the Arsenal game, of course, against Kairat, but I think my eyes may be elsewhere. And there's some big, big games amongst that as well, because what that has done to the state of the table, and where we see teams like Napoli down in 25th place, who have got 8 points, but could still get into the top. Remember, the teams finishing 9th to 24 go into that playoff round. Napoli are at home to Chelsea in the final round of fixtures. If Napoli were to win that game, they would go into the playoff round, and it would consign Chelsea most likely to the playoff round as well. So that's a very interesting game. Dortmund play Inter, another clash between two sides that are trying to get top 8 finishes. PSG host Newcastle, two sides hoping to get a top 8 finish. As I say, it's so exciting to see all of these teams facing one another in these rounds. Liverpool play Karabag, and you wouldn't have expected that to be the game that it is. But Liverpool currently sitting in 4th. Karabag currently sitting down in, I think, 18th place currently. Yes, 18th place. They are sitting on 10 points. They could still get into the top 8. So who knows? They could also still fall out of the bottom 24. So they're going to have plenty of reasons to want to try and beat Liverpool as well. Eintracht Frankfurt taking on Spurs. Atletico taking on Werder Glimt. Bayer Leverkusen, Villarreal. Paphos, Slavia Prague. Benfica, Real Madrid. Club Brugge against Marseille. Union Saint-Gilloise against Atalanta. PSV against Bayern. And Athletic Club against Sporting. It is going to be a round of chaos. It is going to be a final round of mad fixtures. Manchester City, their final game is at home to Galatasaray. So Galatasaray currently sitting in 17th place. They could still finish in the top 8 as well. Man City currently in 11th place. One of those teams on 13 points as things stand. So Karabag could potentially move above Man City if they were to beat them 3-0, but that is unlikely. But they need the points anyway. So yeah, it is really, really, really exciting, this Champions League phase, and what the outcome of it could end up being next week. And all the games are indeed next week. We don't have long to wait until the next round of fixtures. Bad news for Arsenal's women's team, losing in the semi-final of the League Cup against Manchester United. A really disappointing 1-0 defeat. I mean, there's no really escaping just the level of disappointment of this result, missing out on the potential to go through to another League Cup final. But yeah, a very, 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 very disappointing result that leaves the newly renewed René Slegers' kind of time at Arsenal this season, again, reeling from just a big disappointing result. There's not very much more I can say about it other than it's just, yeah, really, really, really disappointing result. And hopefully now it looks like, the FA Cup's still there, but the Champions League as well, and the FA Cup look the only chances of silverware that Arsenal's women's side have got this season. Now, I want to talk to you about some really interesting insights, actually, that I've kind of perused across my social feeds over the last week or so. At the Magic _top hat, who's someone I follow online and produces a lot of really good insights into a lot of different stuff around the sport. Nice fella as well. Has posted this graphic, which I had to share with you because I think it gives Arsenal a really interesting kind of insight into the Premier League and the Champions League. Now, one of the things that's been discussed lately is Arsenal offensively astute enough? Are we risky enough? Are we a boring team? Is it a reality that Arsenal just are not very fun to watch? But how much is it of them that is under their own control? And I had to share this with you because the axis, this is the axis. So the bottom axis, the x-axis, is the defensive line and the height of the defensive line that teams face. So at the top end, you've got like 50 yards away from goal. And on the left-hand side, you've got the opponent defensive line, which is all about how many yards away from your own back line are you playing. Sunderland currently playing against the lowest defensive lines and have the lowest defensive line themselves, are parking the bus as much as they can. Of course, they managed to get a draw off of Arsenal in that game. But if you look at Arsenal in this graphic, Arsenal currently are playing against the highest in terms of the defensive lines. Like, our defensive line is as high as it can be. It is as high as it possibly can. Look how high up the table we are. It's crazy. We are playing as attacking as we possibly can be. But the opponent's defensive line, the higher you go up on that left-hand side, the further back. So I don't know what I said about Sunderland playing kind of the highest. They're playing against very high defensive lines. Sunderland, very high defensive lines. But Arsenal are playing against really low defensive lines. So I feel like I didn't explain that well enough. I feel like I need to go through that again. So the bottom axis, the defensive line, the further from left to right you go, the higher that club's defensive line is. So the higher up the pitch its defenders are, okay? The highest lines. From the bottom to the top on the left-hand side of the axis, the lower or the closer to their own goal line, the opponents of the teams that you're seeing on here set up against you. So Arsenal currently sitting in the top right corner of this. It means that we are playing with the highest defensive line in the league, and we are playing against the deepest of defensive lines in the league consistently. So that's hopefully cleared that up because I didn't explain that well at all the first time around. But it's just a really interesting insight into showing you just what Arsenal are dealing with this season. Why ultimately we find ourselves playing against these low blocks while we are ourselves trying to show that we're capable of attacking high and we're always in possession, so we're dominating teams. And look, anyone that tells you that Arsenal simply do not aim to attack and are boring, well, show them this graph and show them that they are very, very, very wrong. And the other insight I want to talk about today, and I should say also that it's said that Arsenal have now moved above Manchester United in the Deloitte Money League as well recently too, which is a very interesting reality of kind of both of those clubs, and shows you kind of the value of Arsenal over the last few years, now taking them above Manchester United. But Kieran Maguire has produced a graph showing since the Premier League started in 1992, The clubs have lost £4.99 billion between them, and 10 clubs are responsible for 90% of that loss. So 90% of the £4.99 billion that has been lost by Premier League clubs are 10%. The top 10 clubs in this list are responsible for 90% of those losses. Who are those top 10 clubs? Well, it's Chelsea, Aston Villa, Everton, Manchester City, Fulham, Manchester United, Sunderland, Leicester, Bournemouth, and Crystal Palace. They are responsible for 90% of that 4.99 billion that has been lost, which is just absolute madness, really, when you think about it. But where are Arsenal, you might ask? Where are Arsenal on this list? Where are they in terms of £1 billion lost? Well, I could tell you that they're not featuring in the £1 billion lost. In fact, they're not in any of the lost sides. They are very much not in the red and are in the black when it comes to the money made across the league. In fact, Arsenal sit only behind Tottenham Hotspur right now, with £132.4 million made since the Premier League started in 1992. So while Chelsea sit there with £1.256 billion worth of losses since the Premier League started, according to Kieran Maguire's data, Arsenal currently sit with £132.4 million made in that time. Now, of course, as we know, Arsenal went for a really significant period since 1992 where they didn't spend much money at all. And the money that was spent was arguably all around the building of the Emirates Stadium. But my goodness me, it puts some context, doesn't it? You know, when you get like fans saying, oh, Mikel Arteta spent this amount of money, you know, he should be winning leagues by now. This shows you what Arsenal are. This shows you what Arsenal have been. Imagine where Arsenal were on this table prior to the ability that we found ourselves in to spend over the last 5 to 6 years. It just shows you how Arsenal have done what they've done, how Arsenal have risen back to the top of the Premier League table and into, hopefully, we predict, a period of dominance as not only a team that is winning trophies, but that is doing it the right way, that is doing it while in profit, that is doing it while running your club in a way which deserves so much respect and that will hopefully see plenty of sustainable challenges in the seasons to come as well. It's staggering, this graph, and I think it really does provide an insight into what has been achieved at Arsenal over those last 20 years. Yes, we want to see more trophies. Yes, it's frustrating seeing our rivals win things while sitting in losses. Yes, this is not a trophy. This is not something that we should celebrate like a trophy. I'm not saying that it is, but I'm just saying that Arsenal have got themselves in a position where we're all expecting, hoping, fingers crossed, that they're going to lift the Premier League title this season and hopefully begin a sustainable period of dominance at the top of the Premier League table, and having done so by not doing what the likes of Chelsea have done, by not doing what the likes of Manchester City have done. Some people don't care about this. I get it. If you don't even need to talk about it. You don't even need to respond to this. But the reality is that Arsenal are doing this in a really, really important way and the right way when it comes to winning things, as we hope that will happen at the end of this season. Last thing to talk about this morning before we go into the chat box and some of your questions is on Ethan Nwaneri. I didn't talk about this yesterday because, of course, we were focusing in on that result against Inter Milan. But yesterday, everything happened. David Ornstein, of course, was reporting first thing in the morning that Ethan Nwaneri was indeed, on Tuesday, was heading to Marseille, that agreements have been made between the clubs. And then after the game, Mikel Arteta said that they were going to sit down this week and discuss the player's future. That, I think, was somewhat of a misdirection, and that all of the discussions had already taken place. Ethan Nwaneri yesterday flew to Marseille to complete his loan move to the Liga side, where he's going to join the likes of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and hope to return more minutes than he has been able to achieve with Arsenal so far this season. I think there's two ways to look at this. You can look at this in the player reason, and you can look at this for the player. For the player, this is a good move. For the player, he gets minutes, we hope, and there is a loan, and there is certain structures in place in this loan deal financially to encourage Marseille to play the player. He's going to get minutes. He's going to get game time. He's playing in a league that is very physical, so that's not going to cost him anything in terms of kind of that side of his development. Liga is a physical league, so we will benefit from that. He's playing for a side currently, at the moment at least, in the Champions League, and so hopefully should also be playing some Champions League football this season. Marseille currently are sitting in 19th place, so they should, barring any chaotic finishes to their season, finish in the top 24. Their final Champions League game is away to Club Brugge, so it's a tricky game, but you would hope that they would still be able to finish in the top 24, so we might get some more Champions League minutes in the playoff round as well. Look, this is, from a club perspective, it's slightly disappointing. I would have hoped that Ethan Nwaneri would have got more game time this season, but he hasn't done. 160 minutes of Premier League football is not enough. It's not enough at all for a player of his quality, a player of his age, a player where he needs to play. And I also think that, Martin Odegaard has suffered 3 different injuries this season. Eze's not been in particularly great form. Mikel Merino, is he going to be enough to play in that attacking midfield role if we need him to? Kai Havertz is now back, but he's coming back from a big injury. And Ethan Nwaneri is one of the best finishers for me at the club and has got the capacity to score great goals. Are we going to miss him? Is this a risk? I think there is a level of risk to this loan transfer for Arsenal, but they've got to hope that they can keep their players fit. Max Dowman could be coming back, of course, in the next month, which might help with that situation as well. I think that we have to be a little bit, in reflection, open to the idea that the player needs to be put before the club here, and we need to make sure that he is getting the game time that he needs. He needs that game time. It's disappointing to see him go. It really, really is. But it's only a loan move. He's signed a long-term contract until 2030. He's not going anywhere unless somebody buys him. And we're hoping that this really raises his profile and gives him the opportunities that he needs to succeed in a good league, with a good team, in a really harsh environment as well. Great experience for him playing in Marseille. So I'm hoping, as Saliba did, when Saliba went to Marseille, it was the absolute making of him. Let's hope that the same can happen with Ethan Nwaneri. So fingers crossed that's going to be the case. Fingers crossed that you also got your hands, as you should have done, because if you haven't by now, I can't believe I'm even saying this still, but you need surely to have got your hands on a little bit maybe of a loan transfer of your own by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and getting yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2 year plan, and the securing the safety that you need for yourself while you're online. Perhaps a public Wi-Fi service. I tell you what, it was an absolute lifesaver while I was in Milan, giving me the opportunity to watch the TNT Sports highlights after the game, because you cannot watch them highlights. It's maybe some of you that were out there will have found this. You hopped onto YouTube, you wanted to see the highlights of the game against Milan. Of course, why wouldn't you? You want to check out the highlights of that brilliant fixture. Oh, wait, I can't. Where are my TNT Sports highlights? Well, if you had NordVPN, you would have been able to hop digitally back to the UK, and they would have popped up as if you were there back at home. nordvpn.com/Gooner. Listen to your favourites while you're abroad. Give yourself the safety and security that you need while you are indeed surfing the net and whatever you happen to be doing, and you can get a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. Right, let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Okay, this is indeed part 2 of today's show. We're going to be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions. So if you indeed got any questions that you would like to ask, now is the time to do so. Let's get some of these questions, shall we? Mark says, Tom, if we win the league, when do you think the approximate date that we will have the parade? Last game of the season is the 24th. Would it be on the 25th? Depends if we're still in the Champions League, Mark, because the Champions League final would take place the week after. So if Arsenal were still in the Champions League final, they would wait to do the parade until after the Champions League final in case they win the Champions League. But look, there's a long way to go. So a lot can change. It's January. Let's focus on parades when indeed it looks a lot more likely that we might win the league. I know it is looking good now, but there's still a long, long way to go. DG says Ethan has proved last season that he is good enough with goals and assists. Noni has 0 goals and assists with 13 games. Ethan has scored 9 times last season. This is a disgrace. I don't think it's a disgrace at all. That's a bit over the top. Denver Eat says, Tom, who has been your player of the season so far? It's Declan Rice, I think. It's difficult to look beyond Declan Rice. I mean, I've really enjoyed Jurriën Timber, obviously, but Alejandro Trossard's had a good season too, but I think it's got to be Declan Rice. I just think it has to be Declan Rice. Daniel says, which player would you be happiest for personally to see them waving a trophy around at the end of the season? I think for me, it's Saliba or White after everything they've been through, and maybe Saka. For me, it's Ødegaard. The reason why it's Ødegaard is because at the start of the season, Tony Adams came out and said Arsenal will not win the Premier League with Martin Ødegaard as their captain. So just being able to prove those doubters wrong and to lift the Premier League title, I think for me it's Martin Ødegaard for that reason. That's who I would be most. But yes, you're right to raise Saliba and White and Gabriel, Saka, Arteta. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good answers to that question. Tom says, Tom, it would be ironic if Marseille win the Champions League and we're in the final. Well, I think they're allowed to play against their parent clubs in the Champions League. Eamon says, is Calafiori due to come back soon? Hopefully. Obviously, he suffered a muscular injury. They tend to be weeks rather than months, but they can be more serious. But the hope is that he's going to be back soon, and boy, do we need him back. Coco says, Tom, seems like Mateta is keen on moving as well. If Gabriel Jesus does move on, should we consider him? It seems that he might move this winter. So I doubt that Arsenal will be able to get their hands on him, but he's a good player. But the age bracket is a little bit too on the older side, I think, for Arsenal, considering they've already signed Victor Gyökeres at 27. I don't see them signing another 28-year-old centre forward. I think he's 28, isn't he? Mateta? He's 28, yeah. So difficult to see us signing Mateta. Ken says, morning, Tom. I've heard that FBref have lost the rights to use some of their data. Can you elaborate? I mean, there's not much to elaborate on. If you go onto the FBref website, which is a fantastic website, and it's one that we have been using for a very long time to help provide with stats and give us information. If you click on the link at the top of the page, it will explain everything to you. But effectively, they've had the rights for the data that they've been using taken away, and they've decided to cooperate with that. It's a real shame. I know a lot of people have been commenting on this. I saw Phil Costa tweet about it yesterday. I thought he explained it very, very well and explained kind of his thoughts. It's really disappointing to see Opta or Perform pull their advanced stats away from FBref. Public access to good football data is already shocking, and now one of the best websites for bringing that bridging that gap has been nuked. A great resource for analysis and conversation is gone. And I used to pay a lot of money to use Y-Scout. I stopped paying for Y-Scout because they kept on hiking the prices of Y-Scout. It was crazy. I'm talking about £300, £400, £500 a year to access the data that Y-Scout was providing. And I just couldn't. I just could not justify that spend on that. So yeah, I just couldn't. So FBref provided a great amount of accessible data. I still have got access to some Opta stats just through my work, but obviously I can't access them like that. I have to request data whenever I want it. So that also is really, really challenging to be able to use. So yeah, it's not ideal. And look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have to pay to get data, because look, these sites that have data, that collect data, that assess games, they have to pay people. People have to be paid. People have to do these things. But the amount of money that it costs to get data for just your average Joe or Jackie, I don't know if that's the right phrase. Average Joe is quite a sexist way of putting it. Is there an average Julie? I don't know. But, it's just so much money, like, to get good football data. Average Jane, maybe. I don't know. I think everyone's saying it's Jane. Okay, I didn't know. Jackie, Jane, Julie. Yeah, for the average Jane or average Joe to get access to good data, Joe is a unisex name. That's a really good point, Daniel. That's a really good point. I don't know how people are going to get better access to good data now. There are sites like, loads of sites out there that provide data, Soccerway, Transfermarkt. You can get data more broadly, but to get like expected goals and pressures and per 90 stats and, just to get data like, it's just tough. So it's really a frustration. It's a really frustration. AJ says, "This is the AJ. Every time you just, oh my days, how you reveal yourself every time. The first comment you leave in the live show today is that. My word." Jojo says, "How appropriate." Jojo says, "I feel like people forgot the fact that we're going to have a tough quarter and a semi-final in the Champions League because 4 of the 5 are in the top 8." Look, every game in the Champions League is hard. Every game in the Champions League is hard. It's just the reality of those competitions. And even if we get to the last, we will get to the last 16 because we're guaranteed to get there. But whoever we get in the last 16, there's going to be a tough game. The potential for Arsenal to get a really difficult side is just the reality. Currently it could be Marseille or Bayer Leverkusen or PSV or Athletic Club again or Napoli. It could be Dortmund or Juve or Inter again. Like it could be Galatasaray or Karabakh. Like it could be any of these teams still. So yeah, it really is a difficult scenario to find ourselves in. Whatever it is, to win the Champions League, you've got to beat big teams. So can't be complaining about who we get drawn against. Liverpool finished top and got PSG, the eventual winners, and were knocked out in the last 16. So just finishing top does not guarantee you anything. Let's scroll up in the chat box a little, shall we? D says, "Funny how the data is being pulled the season like we're looking to win it." I don't think that's got anything to do with it, D. I don't think that's got anything to do with it. Anyone who has access to Opta stats, like, I thankfully do through my work. I have to request the stats that I want, and I can't just get them like that and search them up. I have to request them, but still, it's not like I can't access them. So yeah, there you go. Aoife says, "You're always going to have tough fixtures. Then it's the best 8 and the best 4 in the competition." Exactly. It's just the best 16, then the best 8, then the best 4. You're going to have difficult games. You've got to play difficult teams. But we've got the squad now, we hope, to deal with it. We're not going to have Mikel Merino. With all due respect to Mikel Merino, who did a great job, but he was our centre forward going to the Bernabeu. We have Mikel Merino as our starting centre forward, playing 2 legs against Real Madrid that we won 5-1, and then going into a Champions League semi-final with Mikel Merino as our centre forward. That is just crazy. That is really, really, really crazy. Pablo says, "Arda Güler isn't better than Ethan. I believe that we need more time to play and prove his worth to Arsenal." Same as Eza, I believe, as well. Aoife says, "The real issue is getting a tough draw in the round of 16 because they didn't perform well in the group games." DG says, "Are Arsenal fans not important? At this moment, everyone who's associated with Arsenal feels entitled." There is a level of entitlement. I think there's a level of expectation that's absolutely fair. At no point are you entitled to the Premier League title. No club is entitled to the Premier League title. So look, I really don't think that it's bad for anyone to be expecting Arsenal to win the league now. But if you think Arsenal are entitled to it, then that's where you're wrong. That's where you cross a line, because you're not entitled to win a Premier League title. No one is entitled to win it. Arsenal deserve to win it at the moment, based upon what we've seen so far. And the expectation is definitely that Arsenal are going to win the league. But it's still a long, 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 long way to go. Abhinav says, "I'll be at the Emirates my first time in my life on Wednesday, and I can't wait to hear that Champions League music." Hope I bump into you, Tom. You'd have to walk into the press room or the press box to bump into me, or happen to meet me outside. But have an amazing time and enjoy it. First games are magical, and I hope that it's a big one for you as well. Ansi says, "Tom, how do Arsenal work with Max Dowman's school, with it being his GCSEs and years in terms of balancing training and studying?" Well, he's currently injured at the moment, which is giving him a lot more time to focus on school. But Mikel Arteta has talked at length about this. You know, Per Mertesacker has talked about this. The club have a really good kind of scheme in how they focus and balance work life. They support schooling. A lot of it is kind of done around training, you know, while they have to train. So yeah, it's all balanced, it's all worked out, it's all meticulously planned. So Anthony, you don't need to worry about that. It's done for all players, and they do it really, really well. Eddie says, now that you've mentioned Real Madrid, I was thinking about Gyökeres playing instead of Marino against Real Madrid last season. I mean, who knows what would have happened? It's impossible to predict. Thomas says, Tom, do you think that if we don't win the Champions League, Calafiori will become a pro model? I mean, he could do, couldn't he? Tony says, Tom, let's give some thought for Pep and his injuries like he did with us when they pipped us to the title. I mean, Arsenal have had more injuries than Man City have this season. You know, currently Man City have more than us, but at the start of the season, we had far more than them. So I'm not giving any respite or reprieve to Manchester City whatsoever. John says, everyone who has joined has said how demanding the manager is. Odegaard took time to settle. Not everyone wanted him after his loan. Rice took time, admittedly. Eza, Noni, Gyökeres, and time to get in the structure. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that we are in a period where those players are adapting. Players like Eza, players like Gyökeres, who are in their mid to late 20s, you know, coming into a club, having had experience of playing at the top level, either the Champions League or the Premier League, there's expectation on them. They don't get the free hits that team players before them got because they are coming in at a different time. They've pushed to come in at a different period. They don't get the grace periods that the likes of Havertz got in 2023, that Odegaard got, that Saliba got, that Gabriel got. They don't get those grace periods. They've come in at different points in their careers, at a different point of the Arsenal project. You don't get the same grace period as those players then as they do now. The context has changed. The context is different. So they get, obviously they are adapting and there is a level of context to that, but they're coming in at a time that they need to deliver. Look at Martin Zubimendi, for example, come in, delivered straight away. And that's because he was signed to be a player that would do that. Same for Gyökeres, same for Eza. They weren't signed as players to gradually integrate. They were signed as players to have an immediate, guaranteed impact. That's why they were signed. That's why we paid the big money for them. And that's why they don't get that grace period that others got at different points of their careers, at different points of their ages, at different points of the Arsenal project. Travesta says, do you think that we can take this form until the end of the season with the injuries that we have sustained? I sincerely hope so. Claire says, I remember my first game. It was at Highbury and we lost 3-0 to Coventry City with Mickey Quinn scoring a hat-trick and it scarred me for life. Aoife says, I think that's a bit of a reach in regards to what? What's a bit of a reach? I'm curious now what the debate is going on in the chat box, if I can find the comment, which whenever I try and do this, I never, ever, ever, ever can. Matt says, I have a theory about Eza. Because of how his Arsenal journey has unfolded, he believes God planned it. Maybe he's subconsciously relying on faith instead of hard work and learning. No, I don't think so. Faith is important to Eza, as it is for a number of players, but he is working extremely hard. That is no doubt about it. That's not how faith works. So I agree. That is definitely a reach. DG says, I didn't say that we are entitled to the Premier League. I was responding to someone saying entitled Arsenal fans can't criticise players. I just said everyone feels entitled. Does that mean everyone can't have positive criticism? Anyone can criticise. You're allowed to criticise. You're not allowed to abuse, but you can criticise. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with being critical. There's nothing wrong with being... there's nothing wrong with assessing what you're seeing and having an opinion on it. Equally, you have to be ready to be challenged on your opinion. And if your opinion turns out to be proven wrong, you got to have the magnanimousness. Is that the word? The magnanimousness, I think, to be able to hold your hands up and say, fair play, I got it wrong. As well. You know, we've got plenty of things wrong. I've got so many things wrong about Arsenal. I thought your Christ was going to be an immediate hit, and I'm being proven wrong at the moment. Tony says, Tom, before it was Havertz, a waste of money. The new one is now, he's always injured. It's amazing. Sorry, Tony, I don't understand your comment. He missed 2025. Outside of that year of injuries, he's been very available. So I'm not quite following. Tyzer says Zubimendi is basically playing his same game as a holding. I'm sorry, John, I don't agree with you. If you think Arsenal's philosophy and build-up and domination and possession stats and the way in which they play is anything similar to Real Sociedad, you need to watch more of both teams when Zubimendi played for both. The way in which Zubimendi was being talked about when he was at Real Sociedad, how people were watching his games against PSG and judging whether or not he could do what he was doing there for Arsenal, shows exactly the differences between those two sides. It's night and day. He's coming to Arsenal. He's coming to the Premier League, which is a very different league to La Liga as well, and had an immediate impact. So I'm sorry, I don't agree with you there. Magnanimity is the word, apparently, in the chat box. Mikey says, Pep was always lauded for experimenting first half of the season and then it all clicking in the second half. At this stage, we're getting a good idea of what people can offer and we're seeing them come into form. Tony says, I was talking about a certain podcast talking about Havertz, not me. Okay. Oh, why? I don't know why people are always so cryptic about things. Six says Gyökeres is a flop. It's just one goal in all comps away from the signing of the season. Like Ekitike, it's funny that. Oh, sorry. I see. I'm making sense of it. Gyökeres has 9 goals this season. He's only got one less goal than Ekitike, who a lot of people have said is a signing of the season. I think Ekitike has been a good signing for Liverpool, no doubt about that. I think it's more to do with the fact of kind of like how he fits into that squad. Liverpool have been having a bad season, whereas obviously Arsenal have been having a good season. So the argument is if Ekitike is doing this for a bad team, he scored 12 goals this season, to be fair, Ekitike. So I don't know where they got that whole... Well, I guess did he score last night in the Champions League? No. He's got 12 goals. Gyökeres has got 9 goals. So where has it come from that he's got one less goal? Hugo Ekitike got 15 goal contributions this season. Gyökeres has got... Let's have a quick look. Gyökeres has got 10. So Ekitike's got 5 more goal contributions. He's got 3 more goals. So I'm not sure where that's come from. I don't know where that stats come from. That seems wrong, doesn't it? Where are people getting that from? I don't know. I don't know where people have got that from. Let's go to D, who says, Tom, would you mind scrolling up and reading out the stat I posted, if I can find it, which is proven to be equally challenging every single... Why couldn't you just copy and paste it? Oh, here we go. 2015, 16 points with Ødegaard, 2.37 points without, 2.56 goals with Ødegaard, 1.95 without, 2.22. How many games was it that we had with and without him? And what were the games? Because it's really easy to put kind of these stats in where we have with and without. But, I mean, what were the games that we had where we didn't have him? Were they against teams that typically Arsenal tend to score more goals against? And when we didn't have him, were they against teams that Arsenal tend not to score as many goals against them? So it's all well and good, those kind of stats. I get it. But who were the teams that Arsenal played when they had Ødegaard and when they didn't have Ødegaard? So I think there's something in that. It's like this season, people have pointed out that Arsenal have managed to beat Atletico, Inter, and Bayern, and he didn't start any of those games. But we all know that the Champions League is far more open and suiting to Arsenal's style of play. So, yeah, it doesn't really work. So I get it, but it's context. It is context. Let's go to Barry. Says Zubi is definitely the signing of the season. I absolutely agree with you. DJ says, bring in a manager with experience. You set the standards. That's my point. Yes, paying fans are allowed to have positive criticism and demand better from their club. No one's bigger than the... What? Are you seriously suggesting that we need to get rid of the manager that's currently top of the Premier League, top of the Champions League, into the League Cup semi-final with a 3-2 league going into a home second leg and in the FA Cup fourth round? Is that what you're suggesting? I don't quite understand. Rons of Cow says, well, that's fancy. Hitting the like button now produces a little football. For some people, I think it does. So, yeah, interesting. John says, have you seen TFT talk about the reporter on Hold the Back Pages on Sky who said Arsenal would be champions because the rest of the league is so poor? He tears it apart. He talks about bias. Look, Terry's very good on Arsenal. He does defend Arsenal quite effectively. Sometimes he goes too far, and I think he did that a little bit with Sam Dean's piece. But I do think that we are seeing a lot of people suddenly come out and say that the Premier League's this, the Premier League's that, Arsenal are top of this. Well, if is the whole of Europe bad then? Because Arsenal have just beaten Inter, Bayern, and Atletico on their way to getting 7 wins from 7 in the Champions. So is all of football bad? Is that what it is? Is that what it is? DJ says, I didn't say get rid of manager. I said that as the Arsenal fans can demand better because we've been here before and didn't win anything. For sure, the pressure is on the manager, and rightly so, due to past failures. Right? Yeah. What I don't get is why you're even bringing it up into the conversation at the moment. Like, why? What's the context that would administer this type of response now? Like, if Arsenal don't win the league, I absolutely think it's fair to bring up these conversations. But when you start talking about the idea of past failures and managers, and we need a more experienced coach, whatever, here and now, I think it reveals more about you than it does about a supposed opinion. Let's go to Arthur. Says Terry is an Arsenal fan in disguise. I love him. He's definitely not. He is a Man United fan, but he just kind of gets that there is this element of anti-Arsenal in some aspects of the media. Tony says Liverpool weren't that great last season, but because it's us, it's a bad league. Liverpool weren't amazing last season. Arsenal had ridiculous injuries and have had ridiculous injuries this season again, and they've managed to continue. The fact that Arsenal finished second last season and got to the Champions League semi-final, I honestly looked at as the most impressive thing that Arteta has done so far at Arsenal. The fact he got Arsenal to that level with the players that he had available to him and with the amount of players that were missing from his team was staggering. Absolutely staggering that we got that far with that team, with those available players. And so this season, even though we've lost even more players, we are managing to be able to compete still. And not just compete, but be the top. And that's really, really, really key to look at. Squeezy Cake says Arteta has earned the right to complete a decade regardless. Then it's up to what ideas he has going forwards. I wouldn't go that far, but he would have earned plenty of grace if he wins the league this season. LMS says everyone is just salty right now, and I love it. Z says I think that we Arsenal fans are good consumers for Terry. They are consuming. If you watch the Act Man, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Good content creator. Oba1 says I love Odegaard, I really do. And I think he plays very well. But I think the problem with Odegaard playing is that Arsenal seem more predictable with him than with Eze starting as well. I think Eze is a more unpredictable player than Odegaard. There's no doubt about that. And by account, then yes, absolutely. But I think Arsenal are a better team with Odegaard in the team than Eze right now, just based upon both of their outputs. Odegaard's had some poor performances of late, but he's also had some really good ones also since coming back from injury. And the numbers as well speak volumes. Top 3% of shot creating actions for any of Europe's top 5 leagues for an attacking midfielder. That says it all. That says it all. Knowledge says, I think people who moan about Arteta should go and support another club. Well, I never lean into that because I think that's a little entitled when it comes to that opinion. You have to accept that other people have opinions, other opinions to you. Other people have different opinions to you. And that's just the reality. It's why when you see, so for instance, the Gyökeres debate is a good example of this. If I have a different opinion to someone else on Gyökeres, what sometimes you'll see is saying, oh, you've got an agenda against Gyökeres. That's arguably the most arrogant opinion that you can have. To say that someone else has an agenda because their opinion is different to yours, that's incredibly arrogant. Incredibly arrogant. Because if they are able to justify that opinion, you cannot turn around to say that they just have an agenda. Because imagine the only reason in your mind that someone else could have a different opinion to you is if there's some kind of ulterior motive. So arrogant. Incredibly arrogant. Which is why I used to use that word, agenda, all the time. And then I realized, oh, wait, now that's incredibly arrogant to be turning around to people and saying they've got agendas. Unless you can prove it. Unless you can prove it. Most of the time you can't. So, yeah. Spinman says, no, Tom, this is a cult. No dissenters allowed. I mean, it's definitely not a cult. Mike says, sometimes other people's opinions can be just ass. Yeah, you're right. It can be. And they tend to be the opinions that are easily disproven with basic facts. DG says, I do think that we can win trophies this season. I hope we do. My want for success is greater than getting rid of a manager. I want Arteta to succeed. So let's win the first one available, which is the Carabao Cup. Agreed. Pablo says, I just wish Martin would get in more shooting positions so he could take more shots at goal. He does need to be more risky. Don't think there's any question there. We all want him to be more risky. Money Motivated Boss says, I fully agree. Arteta out experts should support managers sacking teams like Spurs that stop destroying progress as well. Arthur says killing the game is magical, especially after any Arsenal match as well. It does happen a lot when Arsenal happen to be kind of at a certain point. You do tend to see kind of some aspects of the media turn around and say that it's to do with the quality of the Premier League. It's a load of rubbish. It's a load of rubbish. Soup says honest opinions should change based on evidence. You would hope, but unfortunately they don't. Some people stick very proudly to their opinions like they're a football shirt. Unfortunately, it's part of politics as well. Footballification of politics is another big thing. You know, people aren't willing to change teams, change views based upon the evidence that's in front of them because they see their team, they see their opinions, they see what they think of the world as like a football shirt. And yeah, I won't go too much into that side of things, but that is unfortunately how people, it's why people will vote a certain way for the entire life, no matter what evidence is in front of them, because they see it like a football team when it's not. And opinions in football should not be like you supporting a team. Your opinion should not be like your own football team. Your opinion should be able to change. It's really, really important to do that. D says, I don't think Martin is allowed to be more risky. I think this is maybe his issue. I think Arteta has drilled it out of him and Arteta sees risk as a liability. If you actually listen to Arteta speak, he gets incredibly frustrated that his team don't take more risks. He wants to encourage risk-taking. If you listen to him talk about it, he talks about how he wants his team to be more risky, to use their dominance. But there is an element of control, yes. It's about finding the balance. It's about finding the balance between being risky, but also not making silly mistakes. I mean, look at Zubimendi's pass against Inter, you know, where he nearly gave up a big chance and Lautaro thankfully missed. But it's those situations. And again, creative then doesn't really work, D, does it? Because as I said, top 3% of shot creating actions over the last year for attacking midfielders. It's not about being creative or not taking enough risk for Odegaard. He creates plenty of chances. Again, it's what ultimately what I think it's what who's been on the end of those chances. And the opportunity that hasn't been taken as a result of those chances being taken. This is why I've talked about this idea of, for me, finishing has been the big over the last year. In 2025, finishing for me was always the biggest problem. We created chances, we just couldn't take them. Even when our creativity was limited, we weren't taking the chances that we created. Period. And that has been a huge issue this season. We could be free and clear. Look at the Forest game. Think about the chances we created through that Forest game that we didn't take. Rice, Marino, Jesus. You could put the penalty in there, but that's not in our control. Martinelli's 2 opportunities. Gyökeres's opportunity. It's all about finishing for me this season. We're creating chances. We're just still frustratingly not good enough at finishing. And we hoped that the arrival of some players would change that, but it's not changed it enough. Right, that's going to bring an end to today's show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. If you want to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. That'd be greatly appreciated. I look forward to catching up with you all tomorrow. The press conference isn't early, so I will be able to do the usual 8 a.m. live show. So I'll see you tomorrow, and of course on Saturday ahead of the game against Manchester United on Sunday. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.